We're making a video.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Airport Special Management Committee to attention, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, or no, it's not an evening, this is an afternoon meeting. Good afternoon, everybody. I didn't receive any cards, but is there any comment on the consent agenda from anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll move on to the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull an item from consent agenda?
I move approval.
Second. I'll second it. Okay, I have a motion to approve and a second. Everybody in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes. Your turn, Steve.
Good afternoon. Item number 3 is for the Airport Emergency Services Recovery and Repatriation of Personal Items. That's a request the board rank proposals submitted for airport emergency services. There are 2 responses that were received, and staff recommends the ASMC rank the firms in accordance with the staff's review and order of preference, and move the item to the board for approval. If the Board of Port Commissioners approves the selection, staff will begin contract negotiations with the top-ranked vendor, BMS CAT of Florida. However, if the ASMC members would prefer to hear oral presentations prior to their ranking, staff would recommend those presentations be held with the 2 vendors at a future meeting.
Any questions from the committee?
I move that we accept staff.
Prior to a motion, is there any comment from the audience? Thank you. I'd hear a motion.
I move that we approve the recommendation made by staff.
I second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Emily Underhill, Development. Administrative agenda item number 4. Earlier this year, you shortlisted 3 very reputable design firms for further consideration to rehabilitate runway 624 and other associated pavements here at RSW. As the second busiest single runway airport in the U.S. behind San Diego, keeping our runway in good condition is critical to our success and the normal operation of our facility. Unlike many of the larger airports that have multiple runways, it's a big challenge to figure out how to repave a single runway while keeping the airport operational. So the firm you recommend for selection today will help us solidify the project approach, develop phasing plans, as well as prepare cost estimates so that we can use to secure the needed grant funding for the project. Ultimately, the selected firm would prepare full design plans and specifications for the rehabilitation of runway 624. All 3 firms here are ready to present their resume and qualifications for your consideration. So if there are no more questions of me, I'll turn it over to Melissa to begin the presentations.
Are there any questions for Emily? No, I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Wendell, Senior Procurement Agent for Lee County, or Senior Procurement Manager for Lee County Port Authority. And as Deputy Executive Director Underhill stated, we will hear presentations today from 3 firms for LOQ 22-20 in JD, Professional Architectural and Engineering Services for RSW Runway 624 and Associated Pavements Rehabilitation. Each one of the firms will have 10 minutes for their presentation. They're with unlimited questions and answer session with you, and then a 1-minute wrap-up. So I would like to invite the first presenter, Jacobs Engineering Incorporated, and I'd like to introduce to you Lisa Ennis.
You may begin when you're ready.
Okay. Hello and good afternoon to the committee today. My name is Lisa Ennis, and I am your project manager for the runway 624 and rehabilitation of this runway. Today I have with me Joe Sawmiller, who is the design manager, and Chris Balker, who is the quality manager. So today I'm going to discuss Jacob's experience, my personal experience, our dedicated project team, and also our preliminary project approach for this project. So Jacobs has an extensive runway rehab experience. And additionally, we have even extensive single runway experience. We have rehabilitated single runways from coast to coast, from San Diego to Key West International Airport. We have done different types of project phasing approaches, as I'll discuss a little bit later. So one of the examples is at Bangor, Maine. This is a single runway like yourself, and for this one we used displaced threshold. So we did half of the runway was closed for construction, and then half of the runway was open for airport operations. This was a huge success, and Bangor is still one of our clients today. The next one I want to feature is Key West International Airport. So I'll speak a little bit more about this a little bit later, but Key West International Airport is also a single runway like yourself, and we used night closures for this one. And then Hill Air Force Base. Similar to what was listed in the proposal, we actually used a taxiway as a temporary runway for this project. So as you can see, we have experience working in different types of project approaches and project procedures, and we have experience with commercial, general, and of course military as well. So a little bit about myself. So prior to the pandemic, I was the project manager for the rehab at Key West International Airport. Like yourself, single runway, and with the single runway, we were presented with multiple challenges during that. But those challenges allowed for us to overcome them and then also provide creative project approaches for our client. One of the challenges that were presented to us was during the project, some of the airlines were unable to land on a wet, ungrooved runway. So as soon as the milling machines came out, the runway was considered ungrooved. So because of that, we had to collaborate with the airlines, with the airport, with the tenants, with all of the stakeholders to make sure that we created the most collaborative project approach for this project. So during that project, we determined, we also had to evaluate the weather challenges. It is an island situation, and figured out that the spring, which is Key West's busiest season, but it's also the driest season, was the best time to do the rehab. Another challenge that we were presented with was that there's no asphalt plants on Key West. The closest asphalt plant is in Miami, Florida, which is 3.5 hours away. So we had to collaborate with those contractors early in on the project to figure out the best way to get that asphalt down to Key West International Airport. So with that being said, it was a huge success. This project was very successful, and the client was very happy with the outcome. There were no cancellations of the airlines, and the runway opened every single day at 7 a.m. It was so successful that we were actually featured in Airport Improvement Magazine for our creative project approach for this project. So now that I told you a little about myself, let me tell you a little bit about my dedicated team of experts that will be working with me during this project. Our Florida team is nationally recognized. We have worked on runways all over the place. And Joe Sawmiller, the design manager, he was involved with the planning phase for the rehab of the runway that was over 15 years ago. And he was also extensively involved with the planning or the design and construction services phase for the midfield terminal complex. So he's familiar with your airport. In addition to our local staff and our Florida staff, we also have a national technical advisors that will be behind us if we get into that sticky situation where we just need a little bit extra help in that in the technical realm. Everyone in Jacobs is very actively involved in professional societies. Our Florida team has a great relationship with the Orlando ADO, so we understand how FAA works. We understand to be able to present the best project delivery as possible for you guys. So now we'll talk about the project approach. So we developed a project approach, a preliminary project approach, just based on the proposal. So we are utilizing taxiway A as a temporary runway 523. But if during the design process that another decision is made, we do have that bench strength, as mentioned previously, to provide solutions for any other option that we decide. So this project is complex. It's going to take a lot of coordination and collaboration with the tenants, with the stakeholders, with the airlines, to make sure that everybody is happy during the construction, which happy, wow, that's a hard thing to say. But so we'll have to continuously collaborate and coordinate with everybody. Additionally, there are multiple changes that from 15 years ago to today for the advisory circulars and the design standards. For instance, we'll have to consider hotspots, which are direct access from aprons to the runway, the approach and departure procedures, AGIS, the new taxiway geometry, and all of those things will have to be considered. So we also developed a preliminary, let's see if it'll work, if it'll be my friend today. Okay, project approach. So once all of that planning phase is complete, we can start getting into the design and the construction part of the project. So we developed this preliminary phasing plan based on what I mentioned. And so assuming that taxiway A will be utilized as temporary runway 523. So first we'll come in, start paving and rehabbing the majority of the area of taxiway A, but keeping the intersections open for, so the cargo facility, the private sky FBO will always have continuous access to the runway 624. Once these areas are complete, we'll move on to the other intersections of taxiway A, complete those, and again, continuous access to runway 624. After all the paving is complete for taxiway A, we will remarket, install lights, signage, nav aids, so this temporary taxiway can be opened as runway 523. In that same time period, we will also close runway 624 for rehab. After that, we'll do a similar approach for runway 624. We'll do the majority of the areas and keeping those intersections open, so the terminal will have very limited operational impacts to access temporary runway 523. So we'll go in, demo and pave these areas, and then we'll come back and do the intersections on off-peak hours or at nighttime operations. So after that's complete, we will convert temporary runway 523 back to taxiway A, and then reopen runway 624. So in closing, you ask, well, why Jacobs? Well, we understand that your runway is your most valuable asset on the airport. It brings people from far and wide to Fort Myers and to the surrounding areas so they can enjoy this beautiful area that we have here. In addition, it brings revenue to not only the airport, but also to our community and also to all of you. And it also provides emergency services in an emergency situation, as we've all experienced recently. We have a proven experience with single runway rehab. We have a dedicated team of experts, and we also love to work collaboratively with our clients and with all the stakeholders to make sure all voices are heard. And lastly, you have my personal commitment to deliver the best design as possible for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Alyssa, were you going to say something first?
No, you go ahead.
is there anything that could happen that was a screw up by somebody that means we have no runway for any kind of period of time?
I wish I had a crystal ball for you and say there's never going to be a screw up in any construction project. But I truly believe that with planning and with collaboration and with coordination with all of the stakeholders and tenants involved, that's where you minimize those issues and make sure that you always have an operational runway for impacts. Do
But
you guys?
can something happen that would make
Could
it
happen
3
now.
day? I mean, I don't mean about that. I mean, during the construction, because of the construction, could something happen that made us stay closed for 3 days or something like that? Is that a possibility?
No, I mean, if with the relationship that we have with the contractor, that they know that that is the most valuable asset on your runway, on your airfield, and so
That's why we're here.
exactly.
Okay.
Scott?
What type of coordination do we need to change 624, or actually activate 523 as a temporary runway? Does that require a new approach, instrument approach? Is that a circle the land approach? What's the deal?
Yes, so that will all have to be evaluated during the planning phase. We would have to evaluate the nav aids and also the approach and departure surfaces going into that temporary runway 523. And so it will definitely need to be, just because all of the design standards have changed from 15 years ago to now. Is there anything else you guys want to add?
I'll just add that the initial go-around 15 years ago created a very good workable template to use as a guideline to how to approach this. Now, granted, as Lisa mentioned, things have changed pretty substantially, and we also have a beautiful control tower going on in the midfield right now it's going to be operational very, very soon. So all those factors considered, we still have a good, solid go-by. We all know that the project back in 2007 was extremely successful. And so we're not going back to square one. The good news is if Taxiway Alpha is selected as the temporary runway, then we're going to have a lot of the previous almost cookie cutter steps in place, but we absolutely must engage all the stakeholders. That's going to be imperative to make sure everybody is 100% bought into this approach. Of course, the FAA has to bless the potential hotspots that will be present, but we feel that we've got an outstanding relationship with the ADO, and we'll work closely with them to make sure that any of those concerns are addressed. And if that's not to their liking, we'll figure out something that is.
What's the distance between Alpha and 624?
I believe 400 feet. Yeah. And just to elaborate a little bit on the benefit of 624, of Taxiway Alpha versus Foxtrot. Foxtrot is not out of contention, right? But it would be a longer process. It would be a more involved pavement repair project. We all know the condition of Foxtrot is substandard compared to Alpha. Alpha is going to take a little bit of rehabilitation to get it up to runway standards. But the previous project 15 years ago, we graded out the safety area, added an ILS approach, which would have to, we'd have to go through the channels with the FAA again on that. And the pavement width is already there as well. So just a lot of the groundwork for creating that temporary runway,
How wide is Foxtrot?
75 feet.
Pretty skinny.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's standard. That is standard. Alpha is also 75, but was constructed with wider shoulders to accommodate that.
Are they both
I'm sorry, Alpha.
stressed for, Alpha? Are they both stressed for the size aircraft we're bringing in?
Yes, they're both rated for Group 5s. So, and you want to get technical about Group 5 doesn't automatically mean the heaviest loads out there. It's likely that they're the heaviest loads, but that's all a function of the landing gear configuration. But geometrically, they are both appropriate for Group 5 aircraft for taxiing purposes. Okay, and it's important to point out that Alpha, because of geometric changes in some of the connecting taxiways, can accommodate taxiway design Group 5 aircraft, whereas Foxtrot still has some non-standard fillets. You know, around the turns, the pavement around the turns.
Is there a weight limitation on Foxtrot and/or Alpha?
We would have to look into that to confirm it. That would be, that would be my specialty to look at the nuts and bolts of that, look at the geotech reports and see what we've got under there. There have been ratings calculated for both the existing runway and various taxiways throughout the airfield, but we would have to confirm everything before we, steps along the way before we decided that was a viable option.
How long would the process, I'm sorry to take so much time here.
You're all right.
How long would the process with the FAA take to recertify and approach to 523, certify that as a usable runway, et cetera? Are you talking months or years? I would think it's years,
yeah,
but
probably a little over a year. Yeah.
okay. I'm not from the FAA, and
Yeah.
I'm not here to help you.
It depends. It depends who you work with.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, you raise a good point. Is Florida DOT and get involved in this?
Some of it, yeah.
Well, it really depends on the funding, but it's going to be the FAA, Orlando ADO, and the approach procedures, we develop it through the AGIS platform. So we submit it to the platform. We've done this on several airports. And establishing a new approach procedure for any airport's probably a 6 to 9 month lead time just to get through their process through the AGS. So it's all FAA based on your question.
I'm very familiar with Key West. I've flown in there so many times, and with Hill Air Force Base, but not the one in California.
The
West?
Bangor? Is that not?
Sorry?
San Diego.
Oh, San Diego.
I'm done. Sorry.
That's all right. No. 2 or 3 questions. One is, what's the total estimated time from start to finish of the project?
I would say probably, a couple years definitely, because the planning phase and the lead time with FAA and all of that, that would be over a year just in that. And then the design would probably be another year time frame. And then after that, the construction process would probably be another 1.5 year time frame. Yeah.
Are there any ways that the project itself could be sped up by having material, for instance, on site, having an available source of asphalt and so forth?
Absolutely. Depending on how far away the asphalt plant is, I believe it's about 20 minutes away from you guys. So that's pretty close already in the grand scheme of things, what I'm used to. So that's like right down the street for me. But yes, definitely that. Definitely the making sure that everyone knows what can happen each night and make sure that we do those things. But I think it's really just the setting expectations so people can understand the process. But speeding it up, yeah, there's some ways that you can speed up that process.
What areas of the project do you perceive as being more difficult than others?
Probably the most difficult is the initial planning phase, is the coordination and making sure that everything is running smoothly and making sure that no balls are dropped and you're able to move forward. And if FAA gives you a response, you respond immediately. So it's never waiting. So I think it's that part is the coordination. It's probably number one, the most difficult. And then the second one is definitely the construction and the coordination with construction. But if we have a plan in place, that will run very smoothly because we understand that once this is constructed, then the next item needs to be constructed, and we can kind of understand, okay, now we need to contact FAA for the AGAS, we need to recertify this runway, we need to make sure that we do this. So having that plan in place gives us kind of stepping stones to make construction easier, because I know that will be where you guys will feel the pain is during the construction process.
Thank you. Anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, so, I do see in reading all this that FDOT is the one that brought forth this statewide report back in November 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Having served on the Florida Transportation Commission, it seemed like you couldn't do anything from beginning to end until 7 years. Everything was 7 years. So it sounds like our port runway is going to end up the same way when we can just have a governor get bridges reconstructed in 20 days. So, I mean, what took so long between 19 and now? Are we just, I don't understand why when it says the runway was in fair condition back in 19. So I guess at some point, I'd love to see timelines on this to see what we could do to put processes, make them more efficient, more flow quickly. I'm sure you probably don't have a response to my outburst here, but
No, but I'd love to
to
brainstorm with you on it.
Well, I'm not the pro in the room. There's plenty of pros in here, but obviously they have to go along with processes out there, and it's people like us that need to help change the process.
Of course.
You know, in the best interest of our clients, who are the people flying in here to help our economic
Development,
viability.
absolutely.
So, okay. I guess I wasn't asking a question. Sorry, Chairman.
Observation.
Yeah.
Any other speeches? Anything from the audience? Okay, you have a minute to wrap up, please.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to present our project approach, and so you can meet our team. We had a great time looking through this proposal process and figuring out those nuts and bolts of this project and trying to figure out the best solution for you guys. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, you can come up now.
All right. I would like to introduce our second firm. And on behalf of our second firm, let's welcome Paul Piro.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for having us here. My name is Paul Piro. I'm representing Kimley Horn. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes describing to you what success looks like. Talk about Kimley Horn, talk about my experience here, our approach to this project. Kimley Horn was founded in 1967. This graphic represents where we have offices all over the country. We're ranked number 8 out of the top 25 airport design firms, according to Engineers News Record. In our 55 years of existence, we've worked on over 1,300 airside projects. 400 of those happen to be runways as a firm. This graphic represents where we have worked and where we are currently working as a firm. A little bit closer to home, we have 18 offices throughout Florida, employ 1,200 employees within the state. And in Fort Myers alone, in our Fort Myers office, we support 43 employees. I call them 43 families. And as the crow flies, our Kimley Horn office is located in downtown Fort Myers. We're very close to the airport and very accessible. A big part of our culture at Kimley Horn and in our DNA is giving back to the community. This right here represents Aviation Day. Kimley Horn has been a sponsor for that event every year. That's where the business communities, the business and the local community gets together to learn more about the importance of aviation here in the Fort Myers area. And more recently, giving back to the community, this is some of the families from our Fort Myers office gathering supplies to help out the families that have been impacted by Hurricane Ian. So we are absolutely part of this community. Let's talk about me for a little bit. I've been in Florida for 22 years. I have more than 35 years of airport experience. This list on the board are a list of runway rehabilitation and runway extension projects which I have personally served as project manager since 2018. Let's talk about what I know about RSW. That journey started about 25 years ago. In 1997, I was the engineer on the terminal concourse expansion. The old terminal down here, there was an expansion. I was the engineer in 1997. In 2001, I'm the engineer of record and lead designer for the midfield terminal apron and taxiway Foxtrot. I led that design. I coordinated with airport staff. I developed those plans for bidding. And in 2004, your runway 624 showed some serious signs of distress. And for 4 consecutive nights, I was on the airfield with a contractor doing emergency repairs for 4 consecutive nights, making sure that runway opened back up in the morning without impacting daytime operations. And after all that, airport staff entrusted me to be the lead designer, engineer of record for the last time this runway was rehabilitated. That design started in 2005. I was the lead designer. I led the development of those plans. I worked with FAA, and I worked with the Lee County Port Authority staff to make that project happen. And at that time, there's some common elements that are very relevant to today's project, and I want to point out a few. Number one, we got to start with heavy engagement right off the chute with FAA. We have to partner with them from the very beginning. There's a lot of coordination to be done, both the nav aids and potential reimbursable agreements. We need a well-planned maintenance of traffic and construction sequencing plan. Yes, that's very important. Why? Because this airport is supportive of $8 billion annually for this community. We can't afford to have any hiccups when this project's going on. Another important factor is airport staff. I worked with Emily Underhill. I worked with Mark Fisher during that time. And as the lead designer, having that consistency this time around brings value to this project. I want to talk to you about my core team. First, I want to introduce Lisa Meekley. Lisa's been a fixture here at the airport probably longer than I have, over 25 years ago. She will be our boots on the ground during construction. Dustin Caldwell recently worked on the new electrical vault on the airfield and taxiway Foxtrot electrical. He's very familiar with the electrical systems. My deputy project manager, Julia Schwartz. Well, Julia has been on the air sites the last 5 to 8 years. She knows the pavements out here. She would be here today, but she's on maternity leave. She's coming back in a couple weeks. We're looking forward to getting her back. But behind that core team are 50 aviation professionals from Kimley Horn in the state of Florida ready to support us. On the approach side, this is very important. It has to begin with what I call program verification, and there's 2 parts to that. One is we're going to develop phasing and sequencing plan. We're going to engage all the stakeholders to do that and partner with FAA. We'll develop the airside safety. We're going to talk about airside safety in those plans, making sure the maintenance of traffic plans promote safety and have uninhibited impacts to airfield operations with the aircraft. And we'll develop a full schedule during that first part of the program verification phase. That is all about safety. The second part, honestly, is understanding project cost. There are issues we have today that everybody's struggling with: material availability, labor availability. The market is very volatile, and that was even before Hurricane Ian. Now we've got to deal with labor shortages, and more material shortages. This is a big concern. And for that reason, we want to have a contractor outreach during this program verification where we engage conversation with the local contracting community to get a good understanding of the labor availability and materials. And that's going to help us develop project costs. These two pieces of program verification are very important as this project launches forward. Talk about technology, data collection, survey, ground penetrating radar. 20 years ago when I was engineer of record on the last rehab, we really didn't have this great technology. But now today it's available. And it's available to everybody. And we're going to employ that as well. It's no secret weapon for anybody. All the firms will be using this. And we're going to make it happen. The good news is this technology produces the data with less impact to airfield operations. From day one, we're also going to institute a process where we're going to meet regularly with Lee County Port Authority staff. And we're going to develop monthly summaries and submit that to staff. The staff can bring them to you and give you a monthly update of the status of the project and the challenges ahead. This animation will be used as we coordinate with the stakeholders. Just one part of the airfield. The first phase is we're going to isolate taxiway alpha and keep 624 operational. When we isolate taxiway alpha, we'll do some needed airfield pavement improvements, and then we'll mark it as a temporary runway condition. Yes, 523, just as it was when I was the previous engineer of record. And when that's marked, we'll put that temporary runway in operation. We'll close down 624. At that point, we'll do the bulk of 624 milling operation, and then we'll do the bulk of the airfield paving in the middle. And that little piece at the end, where the aircraft are using to access taxiway alpha, we'll do that at night, not to impact daytime operations. And we'll mill and we'll pave, and then we'll do our final markings. And at some point, very shortly after that, we'll reopen 624 and close down that temporary runway and convert it back to the taxiway it once was. Just as an example tool as we communicate with our stakeholders. So in the beginning of this presentation, I told you I'd take 10 minutes to describe to you what success would be. Well, we're the only firm here today with a full functioning office here in Fort Myers. We are a national firm and we bring national experience. We have a strong community presence and we have knowledge of your airport here. Not only that, I am the project manager identified for this assignment. I was the previous engineer of record. I know the issues. I bring those lessons learned and I'll bring it to this project as well. There's no substitute for experience. I'll take your questions.
Questions from the committee? Go ahead, Randy. How old are you?
Can't ask that.
You're not allowed to ask that.
I just turned 61.
You've been at it your whole life.
Now we're gonna have a discrimination.
I think that's some same questions that I was asking the others. First of all, the approach. What is the length of 523? I know you got offset.
Yep. Oh, the 523 at that time was about 10,000 feet. FAA was only going to fund a certain amount. They were not going to fund for converting that entire length to a runway at the time. And as things change with the fleet mix, we'll have to reevaluate, revisit that length ultimately again during our.
You showed offset thresholds.
Correct.
Okay, so that would be 10,000 feet?
From threshold to threshold.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I know.
At least that's what it was 20 years ago. I suspect it'll be very close to that.
You do 523 ILS servo to land? How do you do that?
Well, it was marked as visual at the time. In fact, 523, we took down the ILS. We took down the glide slope because it was in the way. It was in the safety area of the temporary condition. And we actually put in, as I recall, a temporary localizer down at the opposite end of the runway. And that was, I believe that came out of the coordination with FAA and the stakeholders and their talking through their needs and their wants to make this project happen.
But we didn't have the GPS approaches back then.
We had to republish the approach plates. Back then we did a lot of coordination with FAA. Now it's a little bit more complicated, and the GPS, ADIP, they're very backed up. To your question earlier, it's going to take some time and some good planning and communication to get them to pay attention, look at us. They are backed up. One of the biggest challenges, you talked about challenges earlier, is getting FAA by your side the whole step of the way.
Participation from NBAA or LCPA or COPA or any of those? NBA, National Business Association?
No, not that I'm aware of, sir.
Thank you. Your questions?
So I understand your role. What is the role? I believe her name was Julia of your deputy.
Julia
project-
Schwartz, yes. Julia's my deputy project manager, so she'll be with my side the whole time, and she has been acting in that capacity recently for Taxiway Foxtrot for Kimley Horn. She's a very familiar entity with staff, and she's really been dedicated to RSW for the last several years.
Has she been working here most of that time at
Yeah,
RSW?
really, this has been
Okay,
her.
and so,
Yeah.
and that would be about how long?
Oh, well, she first started with Kimley Horn about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and one of her first assignments was um, inspecting pavements. We have a contract with FDOT where we go around all the airports and rate the integrity of the pavements, and they rank priority projects that need to be funded first. And Julie was on that team for Kimley Horn, so she was out here
Yeah.
even before she was part of the Taxiway Foxtrot and Pavement Rehab Project.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Is there any questions from the audience? Seeing none, you have a minute to wrap up.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks so much for having us. This is a high-profile project. Okay, this airport is in part responsible for $8 billion a year to this community, and this community is expecting this project to be a success. Kimley Horn is a national firm with a local presence, and we have local knowledge. And for that, I thank you. One more time, there's no substitute for experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, your final presentation today is from Michael Baker International Incorporated and being kicked off by Mark Kistler, Aviation Director.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Kistler. I am the aviation practice lead for Michael Baker. On behalf of the firm, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and present our firm's qualifications. We understand how critical it is for this project to provide a safe and efficient operation to the airport and to maintain those operations throughout. We've dedicated the right team to achieve this. And Michael Baker knows airports. We've been working at airports all over the country, not just there, but also here in Florida. We have 165 aviation professionals behind us to support our team to complete this project for you, many of which are based here in Florida. We have 6 Florida offices, including the office here in Fort Myers. We've been committed to growing our presence in Southwest Florida. That's where we began in Punta Gorda and has continued to as we've provided quality service to our clients. And we look forward to meeting the aviation needs of the region. We hope that story continues with this project. Firm credentials are vital, but we also feel it's more important to have the right team focused on this. The team we have assembled and dedicated to this program has more than 70 single runway projects on their resume. Leading that are the folks you see behind me is our key project team. Their experience includes runway projects at medium and large hub airports, as well as at single commercial airports, including converting runways, taxiways to runways during construction. We're also pleased to have Jeff Gagnon join our firm recently. Jeff had headed up the FAA's Pavement Research and Development group at the FAA Tech Center in New Jersey. Our project manager, Nathan Parrish, is very passionate about aviation. He brings a pilot's perspective and understanding to his work. He's one of our top project managers and has been a pleasure to work with by his clients. And while I can tell you great things about Nathan, I think it's also valuable to see what other aviation professionals have to say about him. So Nathan is one of our top project managers, has runway experience on his resume, has been working here in Lee County, the Southwest Florida region, including projects with Lee County Port Authority since 2009. He is a certified construction manager, so he is not just someone who sits in the office, but has firsthand knowledge of what it takes to implement projects in the field. I'll be glad to turn things over to Nathan now.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure and privilege to be here today. The rest of our presentation is going to focus on these three options in this project. These options we came up with. These options are part of the project, and they were issued in the RFP. Michael Baker has brought forth a fourth option for consideration. We have experience with all four. The team that we have proposed that Mark mentioned earlier has experience with all four of these options. As we approach this project, we want to make sure we do things in the right order. For example, we want to establish the extents of rehabilitation needed before we start getting into the different approach options. And here's an example of all the relevant documents, some of the relevant documents we're familiar with. We want to make sure that when the runway is complete, it's going to last another 20 years and also provide a smooth surface that meets standards. But one item I wanted to highlight is that the FDOT Airport Pavement Evaluation Report for this runway specifically is coming out in January. Looking at these documents up front will save a lot of field work. There probably will be some field work needed, and fortunately, Michael Baker's mobile LiDAR technology is perfectly suited for this project. It really is a game changer when you talk about looking at big construction areas. We've done this at several airfields, as you can see across the country, but we just recently did this at St. Pete Clearwater, where we surveyed the runway in only an hour and a half. And that normally takes over 3 weeks using conventional survey. One thing that comes out of this is what's called the Orbit publication. Orbit is like Google Street View, but for airfields, and it can also measure distance and elevation. This is a key thing that's helped us in the past, and the real value is that this gets turned over to the airport, to LCPA, and they can then use this to really inventory conditions long term. After we've established the rehabilitation approach, we can start getting into phasing options. And I want to be clear here that a lot has changed in the last 20 years, and you can see some of those things up here. But one thing I want to highlight is the peak hour traffic has increased significantly, and that's something I'll touch on later. But the point is that Michael Baker brings a fresh perspective to this project, and that will allow us to collaborate and really objectively come up with the best solution. Let's look at the options. We're going to go through the 4 options here briefly. Option 1 is to displace thresholds. And this would allow the runway to be open, adequate runway length to be open at nighttime, and where you could work during the day in the yellow area and have adequate runway. That would be flipped, and then the other side of the runway displaced. And then finally, the midsection of the runway would be done doing mill and overlay during nighttime. Michael Baker just completed this recently at Atlanta Hartsfield, where we had a displaced threshold. You can see the little picture there with the aircraft taking off over the work area. Options 2 and 3 involve converting a taxiway to a runway temporarily. And the key here is this could require very challenging taxi routes. Michael Baker uses simulations like this to really help the airlines and stakeholders understand how it will impact construction. As an example, let's take a look. In this example, the aircraft would have to cross the temporary runway and then cross 2 construction zones before they re-enter the temporary runway for takeoff. Understanding this and helping the stakeholders understand will be key to success of this project. Another thing to look at that I mentioned earlier is the peak hour traffic. This runway, especially in the months of March and December, is significantly over capacity during the peak hour. So options 1 through 3 would remove a lot of these high-speed exits. And this could be more of a problem now from before and really exacerbate that problem. Fortunately, the FAA has a tool, software out there that analyzes this very thing. And Pam, who is with us here today, has done very similar analysis in the past. As I mentioned earlier, option 4 is the option that has been brought forth by Michael Baker, and this is simply to mill and overlay 1 lane at a time each night. This option would provide the whole length of the runway for the full duration of the project during the day. And we did this successfully at Greensville-Spartanburg International Airport, which is a single runway commercial service airport. Regardless of the option that's selected, engaging stakeholders will be key to this process early and really collaborating with them and really getting their buy-in on the final option that's selected. Mark mentioned that I have a very big team of technical experts behind me. That will allow me as the project manager to really focus on this part of the project. Speaking of stakeholders, we know that LCPA likes to use the CMGC for this type of project, and I have worked with the CMGC in the past for projects that LCPA and I understand and really strongly advocate for this approach. Really creates a team environment and allows for buy-in on that. In closing, Michael Baker is the right team for this project. We have 200 years almost of experience sitting over here, airfields similar to this type of experience. This runway is not the same runway it was 20 years ago. We bring that fresh perspective that we can pull from all of the different similar projects that we've done. This runway will be the same thing when it's done. It'll look the same as it looks now. Maybe a little bit newer. But the key is how do we get there? And understanding that's really engaging those stakeholders and helping that air cargo and those passengers move through this airport efficiently and safely will be the key to the success for this project. As the project manager, I'm dedicated to this project. I really want to work on it. And as you can see, we put a lot of time into this. And I would like to close now and open the floor to any questions.
Questions from the committee? Scott?
I think I've asked them all. I can't think of any more.
Okay.
Same with me. No, I'm good. I'm okay.
Cool.
I'm good.
Fran? Robbie? You presented an option 4. Okay, so I'm not quite sure I understand it, but what I guess I'd like to understand in broader terms is that just call it less cost, provide better transportation capability during the project? So why did you come up with 4?
So looking at the bottom here, that we'd use these decision matrices like this to help come to these conclusions, to help come up with the final answer. And again, bringing that open mind and that fresh perspective, and that things have changed a lot in the last 20 years. Some of the key things you look at: overall construction duration, operational constraints, and you can read these here, last column being total project cost. Each option has their pros and cons. Option 4 would probably be one of the more economical approaches. And also from an operational standpoint, it could and save time on the overall project duration. So there's a lot of good things about that option. I hope that answers your question.
Okay,
If I may,
go ahead.
the other thing, one thing about our team and about Michael Baker is that, as we heard me say earlier, we've worked at over 70 single runway airport projects. Each runway project like that has a different scenario, different factors, different criteria. There's a lessons learned that we will be bringing forward, that we're bringing forward as a team, as a firm, that allows us to kind of look at things. We're not already set saying this is how we've done it before. What's a different way? Is that the right way? And so we're going to bring those lessons learned to the table to make sure they benefit Lee County Port Authority, as Nathan mentioned. This is not the same runway project that was done the last time. You have different traffic mix, you've got different operators, different aircraft types, different FAA criteria. These are all things that are being brought to the table that will be evaluated and looked at as we move forward to execute this project for you. We understand that this is the impact that this airport has on its community. We understand that it's not something that can be shut down or closed or have that detrimental impact to the economy of Southwest Florida. And we're committed to making sure that that happens and we move forward in keeping it operational and everything's done in a very cost-effective and efficient manner. And Nathan's the right person to lead that for us.
I'll get you back. So you did option, what I'll call option four. Was it St. Pete Clearwater, or where did you do that? You say you had done it once before. Or
Yes.
maybe more than once. I don't.
Option four, we've done that multiple times. Dave here, who's with us today, is our single runway and our runway rehabilitation subject matter expert, and he's done it many times before. But the example we showed you is the Greenville Spartanburg in South Carolina, which is also a single runway commercial service.
Okay, at that airport or similar airports to us, but where you've already done option four, did you have similar other options as to what you have here? And then then was your experience based on completing those projects, provided less costs, better operational outcomes? The one, what you said might be possible here if you did it, was it in fact possible, did it in fact come true at the places where you did it? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
So the answer, I believe, is yes. But yes, the answer is yes. So every airport is different, right? Every runway is different. Even as we said, this runway is different than it was 20 years ago, and things change. As things change, time changes, as Mark mentioned, and for Greenville Spartanburg, that was the right answer for them. For this airport, it could be any one of those four options. We just need to do our due diligence to figure it out.
And what did you want to say? Dave? Is it, or, no?
No.
You kept back and
Probably the one that is closest in my mind is Harrisburg International. Converting a taxiway to a runway was not an option. There's only a single parallel there. Actually, Harrisburg consisted of two of those options. The first phase of that project was done with a shortened runway, displacing the threshold, working on the end as was described in option one. And the contractor came up with a plan that gave him the actual safe area at night, and he actually was able to work where he started at night, paved through into the part that was available to him during the day. So during that period, he was actually able to work pretty much the entire day and night. The original plan was to actually, as shown in option three, to do the same exact thing on the other end. Because of that configuration of that airport, each one of those temporary thresholds needed a temporary taxiway constructed. It's been $1 million to build a temporary taxiway to access that temporary threshold. They decided they didn't want to do that again, partly because the work that was done at night in that 6-hour closure that they were able to get was successful in phase one. And so the remaining, I think it was about 7,800 feet, was all done at night in 6-hour windows. And Yeah, it was very successful. So we had no problems with it.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
When you make the plan, options 1, 2, 3, or 4, is it the FAA's ultimate decision to accept the plan, or is it ours?
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort. So it's going to be FAA will be involved, Lee County Port Authority will be involved, the engineer. It will be our job to, as the engineer and as Lee County Port Authority, to really convince the FAA one way or the other based on the evaluation that we kind of went over today and really vetting out those different options and the pros and cons. The FAA will need to buy in on it because they'll most likely be funding a portion of this project, and we'll be going through that effort to really make sure that we're making the right decision.
And to add to that just a bit, the decision really will be ultimately yours. You know, it will have to meet whatever budget the FAA has, and the FAA will work with you to fund that. But where they will really have to buy in, you know, the goal here is to do whatever is the best option to keep this airport operational, and to do it within a reasonable budget, to do it within a reasonable time. Where they will really get most involved, because what's most important, as everyone has said, is safety. And the FAA will have to review the construction safety and phasing plan that we develop that will ultimately become a guideline for the contractor. And they have to be comfortable that the airfield will be safe for both contractors and the traveling public. And so that's where their biggest involvement will be in accepting that. So that, I think, is really where you get the most involvement from them. But for us, the key is make sure that all options are explored and determine in this matrix what is the best balance.
John,
Fran?
did I misunderstand, or did I hear Paul say from Kimberly Horn he was the only local office, but you're saying you have a local office? Where is that?
It's in the forum area.
It's in Fort Myers?
Yes, ma'am, it's by the forum.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good. Robbie?
Yes, sir. I think they all have an office in Fort Myers. He said they were fully operational in Fort Myers.
Okay.
That is how I heard it, just looking on the summary sheets, I think.
Okay.
But I need Michael Baker to give me reassurance that although you do have an office in Fort Myers, you only have 2 employees. So in Fort Myers, and you have 6 offices in Florida, but where are those other 6? And are you going, and I don't know the staffing of them since you're headquartered in Pennsylvania, what gives me the comfort feeling that it's really going to be boots on the ground here and continuous work?
I can, as I mentioned, we have 6 Florida offices. We have offices in Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, West Palm Beach, and here in Fort Myers. Our Tampa office is actually considered one of the firm's aviation centers of excellence. So we have aviation planning, engineering, architecture, environmental, construction services are provided out of that office. Nathan and I both have been working here in Southwest Florida, both at Punta Gorda, now at Naples. Nathan was the project manager for the construction services on the vault project here that was successfully completed. And so we are committed to being here. When we opened, when we were shortlisted to do the presentation for the landside rehabilitation of the roadways here. And one of the questions that this group asked me at that time was, you don't have an office in Fort Myers. Was this a project that would allow us to open that office? I didn't say yes fast enough, and we've learned our lesson. We've opened the office, we've continued to grow it and continue to staff it. We're committed to continuing that, and we're committed to growing our presence in Southwest Florida and committed to serving the aviation needs of this region. And this is one of those projects that will help us continue that story. And we hope that you give us that opportunity.
Thank you.
John? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
Where's your office in Tallahassee?
It is, it's on the north side of I-10.
Is it on the airport?
No, it's not on the airport. It is,
Downtown?
no, it's actually on the north side of I-10, right where Apalachicola Parkway is.
Okay. What are you doing in Naples?
As far as the,
Well, you mentioned Naples, you're doing
correct.
some work there.
Yes, sir. They just selected us to be one of their general consultants.
One of your what?
One of their general consultants
Oh, okay.
for the airport. And we just got our first task order this past week.
Thank
And that work is being done out of staff and based here in Fort Myers.
Thank you.
Anything else from the committee? Any questions from the audience? So Mark or Nathan, you got a minute to sum up?
I'll do it. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's our pleasure to tell you a little bit more about our firm and our commitment to this community. We appreciate that opportunity. We believe we have the right team dedicated to complete this program for you. We are bringing a fresh perspective, looking at our experience at single runway airports and completing runway projects across the country, and bringing those lessons learned here to be to your benefit. And we hope that we're allowed the opportunity to continue that. Again, we feel that we have the right team for this, and we appreciate the support that we received from the Technical Review Committee, and we hope that you agree with them and allow us to proceed with this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, let me take a look at I think we've got one more administrative item, don't we? Can't find my agenda. We did. Okay. We can go ahead, we'll go ahead. If you give us a minute, Emily, we'll go ahead and do our ranking, and then you're next. Everybody, Allison? Yep. Okay. Emily?
Emily Underhill Development. Item number 5. The Port Authority currently holds 2 continuing contracts with Construction Manager General Contractors, or CMGCs, for projects under $4 million. These 3-year contracts are set to expire in March of 2023. Over the last 2.5 years under the current term, the dollar total of assigned tasks to the 2 firms, which includes fees to the subcontractors, totaled approximately $2.6 million. Actual fees earned by the 2 CMGC firms themselves totaled about $626,000 combined. In anticipation of the current contract expirations, staff advertised a request for letters of qualifications to select 2 new CMGC consultants to work on smaller Port Authority construction projects for a new 3-year term from 2023 to 2026. As a result, 4 valid proposals were received. In order to assist you in your evaluation, Port Authority staff held a public meeting to review the submitted responses, and proposal summaries are included in your backup. Staff also scored the proposals from best to least based on criteria including concurrent workload, as well as project experiences of the proposed project manager and their respective firm. As a result, staff recommends that the committee shortlist all 4 responsive firms. Those are OAK, Half Acre Construction Company, A Squared Group, and Gulf Point Construction Company, and hear oral presentations at a future Airport Special Management Committee meeting before presenting a recommended ranking to the board. If in agreement, I would ask Melissa to come forward and randomly select the order of presentations. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I would move that we do the staff. One second, Melissa.
So we hear the
Yes.
presentation.
What,
The
what,
staff,
Randy?
we approve the staff recommendation, which I believe is to,
Your
hear the presentation.
Correct.
Yeah, what's in front of us is to approve the staff recommendation, and if we do, then Melissa will have us
Right.
draw straws, so to
And
speak.
that's my motion.
I second.
Well, okay, but I may hold a motion if I may, please.
Yep.
Are there any other questions of Emily? Any questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain the motion again.
My apologies for jumping the gun. I move that we approve the staff's recommendation and hear presentations at a future meeting.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, Melissa.
All right, so with reference to LP 2266, I ask that you draw the order of presentations.
He's very good at this. A squared.
Okay, first presenter, A squared.
OAK.
Okay,
Half acre.
you.
Gulf Point. Thanks, Melissa. That's the hardest I've worked all day. Okay, I think that's all we have except. I lost my
For
agenda
Ben.
again.
I think Ben is
Done.
next.
I have to
Oh,
hear
wait.
from Ben, I know that.
That's right.
Okay, Ben, your turn.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few comments. RSW set a historic record, more than 11 million passengers for fiscal year 2022, exceeding our prior year traffic record by 11%. The additional passenger traffic during the year led to total revenues of $124 million, which was an increase of 24% more than fiscal year 2021. We'll be wrapping up our year-end reconciliation, going through that process right now, and that'll be coming back to the advisory committee in December, and then it goes to the board in January. Velo Airlines just announced they will inaugurate 3 times weekly nonstop service between RSW and Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina on February 16th. This will be a new city for us and bring our total nonstop markets to 57. The flights will operate on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday, and those seats are available for sale now. And in addition, Air Canada will resume twice weekly service to Montreal beginning this weekend. Base operations sold more than 195,000 gallons of fuel in the month of October. This was a 7% less than October of 2021. However, consider there were limited flight operations for the first week of October due to Hurricane Ian. The numbers were overall pretty good, and sales have been very strong since reopening. We are preparing for Thanksgiving holiday traffic, obviously at both airports. At RSW, we do expect some changes. We're going to have about 100,000 fewer seats coming into the market between this Friday, November 18th, and Sunday, November 27th, than what we had last year during that same period of time. We still expect to be busy. We're going to be sending out media advisories and posting on all social media platforms asking travelers to be at the airport early. That parking, certainly may fill up. If you recall, it did last year during Thanksgiving. And we're certainly more than prepared to handle any of those situations as they arise. And lastly, I want to remind everybody that we do have a meeting on December 20th. And with that, I'd just like to, on behalf of your team at RSW and Pagefield, just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any questions for Ben? Mark, you got anything?
No attorney items, Mr. Chairman.
Last chance, audience. Any comments?
What was that, what was that 100,000?
We're gonna have, we're gonna have 100,000 less seats coming in during that Thanksgiving period from this Friday until the following week. Yeah. So, be a little change for us.
Yeah.
How many
We'll still be
less
busy.
flights is 100,000 people?
Come on, Beth.
Well, Vicky or Carol, how many less flights? Do we have an idea?
We kind of equate seats to it because, you know, the seats are the ones that are meaningful when people are flying. But the flights are down.
We could get you that number.
Come to the microphone.
We can get you that number.
They're just bringing empty planes in, is basically?
No, I will tell you the flights that do come, well, obviously, we're gonna
Well,
have,
I mean, half full.
no, we're gonna have less flights. We're gonna have less flights, and that's why we're gonna have less seats. But I will say that, history shows, and we've even seen that right now, because we've been having some less flights just because of, hotel capacity, our RONs, you know, flights, our bank of flights in the evening, which are starting to come back now, but when they were, we didn't have an evening bank of flights, but, so we had less seats coming in, but the flights are full. And, we expect that the flights will continue to be full, but we will have less seats.
In reading your report, it was sounding like it's the airlines are cutting back on the number of flights that they're sending in here.
Yeah.
And that's why you're saying 100,000 less seats.
Yeah, it's less flights, less
Is
seats.
it because of the hurricane mostly?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with that, you know, and, it's primarily airlines that do more point-to-point service that don't fly through the hubs. Honestly, it's their sales are down. I mean, if the sales were here, for those seats, they wouldn't be changing it because it's a great market for the airlines.
Oh, it's
And
hotel capacity too.
yeah, and I spoke to, you know, I've been speaking to the airlines as Carol and Vicky have been, they're watching things very closely. As soon as they see the demand increase, they can pivot pretty quickly nowadays with their fleet, and they'll be back. But you know, they're not selling the seats. They're gonna put those aircraft somewhere else. So, yeah.
Okay, Melissa?
Okay, Melissa Wendell, Senior Procurement Manager, Lee County Port Authority. I'd like to read into the record the results in reference to LOQ 2220, Professional Architectural and Engineering Services for Runway 624 and Associated Pavements Rehabilitation. The first-ranked firm is Kimley Horn. Second-ranked firm is Michael Baker International, and the final-ranked firm is Jacobs Engineering. Thank you.
They need a motion for that?
Yes.
They need a motion to accept that or no?
I'll make a motion, we accept that return.
Can I hold the motion a minute? Once again, is there any comment from the audience? Okay.
Keep forgetting
Please.
about that.
Randy, go ahead. Now you can
I'll make a
go.
motion that we accept Kimley Horn.
Motion on the table to accept the results of the election. May I have a second, please?
Second, yeah.
Second. Motion's been seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And
Accepted.
we may
We're
adjourn.
adjourned.
I want to, unless there are any comments from the rest of the committee? On behalf of the committee, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday.
I would like to make
Okay, go ahead.
comment. I'd like to congratulate Mark and Emily for their new promotions.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad to hear that came along with a little financial remuneration also. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, I declare this meeting adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
Probably know, though. You've been on the beat, well, the law, is though, is the